This video explains why criminals like George Floyd and Daunte Wright serve as shining examples for others to commit similar crimes, and why almost half the $27 million compensation to George Floyd's family should go to his girlfriend or common law wife, Courtney Ross. Hello, friends. This is Unmasked Truth with Harmanjeet Saini, where I provide unique analysis of world events based on the unmasked truth that after surrender, Germany continued World War II clandestinely and became a killing machine. I also provide true news that you will find nowhere else. The trial of Derek Chauvin, the policeman charged with George Floyd's death, is almost over. The case has gone into jury deliberation. Jury verdict will soon follow. In the meantime, Black Lives Matter movement and other groups are protesting or actually letting law enforcement know that there will be violence all over the country if they don't get the verdict they want. Cities are calling out the National Guard and taking other measures to beef up security, bracing for protests and possibly violence. Law enforcement should deal with violence as they deal with any lawbreakers. Meanwhile, on March 12, 2021, George Floyd's family and his attorney were handsomely rewarded with $27 million by the city of Minneapolis. I don't think anyone sees the gross injustice in this award that Courtney Ross, Floyd's white girlfriend or common law wife for 3 years, has suffered. George Floyd was an adult. He had a former girlfriend and a child by her. They deserve compensation because they were his dependents. But none of the other family members of George Floyd were dependent on him. They do not deserve any compensation, but they are being handsomely rewarded or compensated merely for being black. On the other hand, Courtney Ross, who is white, lived with George Floyd for 3 years and they shared everything together. She was a common law wife. She rightfully deserves to be compensated for George Floyd's death. I would advise her to get an attorney and sue the George Floyd family for half the compensation. That would provide proper justice for her. Then on September 15, 2020, Breonna Taylor's family reached a $12 million settlement with the city of Louisville, Kentucky on her death. Families of Jacob Blake Jr., Daniel Prude, Dijon Kizzy, Jonathan Price, Daunte Wright, and others who died at the hands of police or were shot and severely injured too are licking their chops in anticipation of large settlements. Large settlements are actually fueling more crime. The reason is that all these men who were shot dead by police were using electronically delivered threats to rape white girls or force them to have sex with them. George Floyd was committing that crime against Courtney Ross. He was put to death for that crime as a warning to others to stop such criminal activity. While such warning has persuaded many to quit this criminal activity, others are actually emboldened to continue doing so. The reason is that if such criminals are apprehended by police, they would simply run away from police and resist arrest. That's what all these criminals did. If in the process of resisting arrest they are shot by police and severely injured, they can expect a hefty settlement with the city, which will enable them and their families to enjoy a life of idleness for the rest of their lives without having to work. If they are shot dead by police, then their families will become rich beyond what they could have reasonably imagined. It's an incredible incentive for them to enjoy free sex with beautiful white girls, almost as sex slaves, without any obligation, and then have themselves and their families be handsomely rewarded if they have a run in with the police. Have you noticed the ever escalating amount of the settlements? In Breonna Taylor's case, it was $12 million. Before that, the settlements were much less. In George Floyd's case, it is $27 million. Part of the reason may be how rich the municipality is, but there is another factor at play. It seems that the city officials are deliberately trying to handsomely reward criminals when they are shot by police. And that is the most likely reason when we know who is orchestrating and encouraging all this criminal activity. German masqueraders have been orchestrating all the criminal activity against whites of non German descent since the early 1960s, when Germany developed the capability of delivering threats electronically. In the early days, they set up the mobsters, meaning Italian mafia, as a front to carry out the criminal activity. The vast criminal enterprise helped dark Italians rise above whites of non German descent and become rich, and with threats, they could force the most beautiful white women to marry them. It served the purpose of the German masqueraders to mix whites of non German descent with dark Italians, Greeks, Hispanics, and blacks so that they could then gloat that they are the fairest people on earth. They have been carrying on such activities for the past 60 years. Only in 1999 to 2000 or perhaps 2001 was it discovered that German masqueraders were behind all these criminal activities carried out by the Italian mobsters. The mobsters were too dumb themselves to have carried out their criminal enterprises so successfully for so long. But once you get a taste for the forbidden fruit, that is, get rich by forcing others with threats to give up their business, to give them their business, or force the best white girls to marry them, it is impossible to let this forbidden fruit go. That is why the sons and grandsons of mobsters, meaning most Italians, continue their criminal behavior in some form or another even today. That is the only way they know how to rise above others and become richer than them. German masqueraders were also responsible for starting the civil rights movement in the early 1960s in the form that Martin Luther King Jr. led and energized. He and his organization had the full backing of German masqueraders. And of course, as African Americans made gains in their standard of living because of affirmative action, they too were forced or encouraged by the masqueraders to use threats to force white women to marry them or become their mistresses. And that legacy continues to be carried on by men like George Floyd, Jacob Blake Jr., Dijon Kizzee, Daniel Prude, Ahmaud Arbery, Jonathan Price, and Daunte Wright. German masqueraders have always handsomely rewarded criminal behavior against whites of non German ancestry. That's why we see the settlements and police killings escalating in amount. It's German masqueraders and city government handsomely rewarding criminals to encourage others to indulge in similar criminal behavior against whites of non German ancestry. Killings of men like George Floyd have scared away the weaker ones from indulging in the evil, but the large financial settlements will encourage others. Many will be willing to enjoy the pleasures of sin and then lay down their lives so that their families might benefit. They call these activities providing for their families. Another reason such evil criminal behavior will not stop is because of who is guiding the German masqueraders. It is Satan the devil. Literally, Satan the devil and the demons guide them on what to do in every situation with voices in their minds. And Germans and German masqueraders obey as told because they have enjoyed the fruits of such evil and fabulous riches over the past 60 years. German masqueraders like Warren Buffett, Charlie Munger, Jeffrey Epstein, Harvey Weinstein, Larry Ellison, and many others are great examples of how they have benefited from their evil beyond their imaginations. Once people have tasted the fruit of evil, they cannot let it go. And Satan, as their God, is relentless. He will not allow them to stop. Till they were fully discovered in 1999 and 2000, German masqueraders were able to work on their hidden agenda and their criminal activities virtually unhindered. But since being discovered, they continue to engage in their evil practices, though now they are being brought to justice more frequently, at least in the form of tit for tat killings. But they will keep forcing others, such as Italians and minorities, with threats to continue to commit criminal acts. There should be no doubt in anyone's mind that the goal of the German masqueraders is to take over the country for themselves by exterminating whites of non German ancestry. They are relentless, and Satan will not let them stop. Therefore, for whites of non German ancestry, it is a fight to the death with German masqueraders and their allies. Either they exterminate us or we exterminate them. We now await the verdict in the trial of police officer Derek Chauvin in the killing of George Floyd. If the verdict is not to the liking of German masqueraders and their allies in the Black Lives Matter movement, a movement encouraged by the masqueraders, they will encourage protests, rioting, and violence. If rioting and violence starts, law enforcement should deal with it appropriately to put it down. Hooligans and criminals should not be allowed to take over our cities. Thank you very much for watching this video. Please continue to watch my videos and read my articles on important world events, World War III watch, politics, international business, advice on health and medical problems, and much more for in-depth and insightful analysis. Please also subscribe to my YouTube channel, Unmasked Truth with Harmanjeet Saini, to view and get information on the latest videos.